You can lose a lot of weight and still struggle with belly fat. That's because what most people think of as belly fat isn't just a layer under the skin that you can grab. There's another type of fat deep inside your abdomen called visceral fat, and it wraps around your internal organs, liver, pancreas, intestines, and more, inside the abdominal cavity. This fat isn't just cosmetic, it is metabolically active and plays a major role in how your body functions. It releases hormones and inflammatory factors directly into your bloodstream, which fuels metabolic imbalance and increases disease risk. Research shows that excess visceral fat is strongly linked to type 2 diabetes, heart disease, metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance, and inflammatory conditions, even in people who might look normal on the outside or have a decent BMI. In this video, I'll show you the fastest ways to specifically reduce visceral fat and burn it off efficiently. We'll cover the best foods and drinks to include in your routine, and then the exercises that deliver the most results. Let's talk about fat not just as something people want to lose for looks, but as something that can harm their internal health. Visceral fat, unlike subcutaneous fat under the skin, lives inside the abdominal region and is closely tied to how your metabolism works. When someone has too much, it increases the risk of chronic diseases because of its effects on hormones that control sugars and fats in your body. In large scans from health studies, visceral fat has been linked to higher insulin resistance, metabolic derangement, and a greater risk of cardiovascular problems, even in people who technically have a healthy weight, according to BMI. You need to understand that visceral fat behaves differently from subcutaneous fat. Subcutaneous fat represents energy storage that's tucked under the skin. It doesn't have the same level of metabolic interaction with your organs. Visceral fat, though, sits right next to organs and has direct access to blood vessels and the liver. That means it can influence insulin sensitivity and inflammation in ways other fat simply doesn't. Medical experts often point to visceral fat as a key driver of metabolic syndrome. That's why even people with normal weight can develop diabetes or heart disease if they have too much of this deep-seated fat accumulating in the abdomen. So, how do you tackle this deeply harmful type of fat specifically? It's not enough to just lose weight or focus on the number on the scale. You need a plan with the right nutrition, the right habits, and the right kind of exercise, all geared to reach visceral fat in particular. And yes, science has given us a clear look at what actually works. Let's start with what you eat every single day. What goes into your mouth matters hugely because diet doesn't just influence your weight. It affects how your body stores and uses fat deep inside you. One of the most powerful dietary tools against visceral fat is colorful, nutrient-rich plant foods, especially those high in carotenoids. These are natural pigments that give vegetables and certain fruits their bright colors: the orange of carrots, the red of tomatoes, the deep green of spinach, and the yellow of squash. Beyond making produce beautiful, carotenoids like beta-carotene, lutein, and lycopene act as antioxidants. That means they help your body manage oxidative stress, the kind of cellular damage caused by excess energy and inflammation, which is a contributor to visceral fat storage and metabolic dysfunction. One randomized, double-blind clinical trial carried out in Japan explored how eating carotenoid-rich vegetables affected visceral fat in obese men. Over a set period, participants in groups consuming high amounts of these vegetables showed significant reductions in visceral adipose tissue, the deep fat measured around organs, compared with groups that didn't modify their diet. The biggest improvements were seen in people eating high lycopene foods such as carrots and cabbage, though all groups that increased carotenoid intake experienced reduced visceral fat. Other observational research has found that higher intakes of dietary carotenoids, particularly lycopene and beta-carotene, are associated with lower waist circumference, lower measures of visceral fat, and a lower prevalence of metabolic syndrome in middle-aged and older adults. In some studies, people with the highest carotenoid intake had a significantly lower risk of visceral adiposity and associated metabolic conditions compared with those with the lowest intake. How do carotenoids help at the physiological level? While nutrition science is still unraveling all the mechanisms, evidence suggests that carotenoids have two primary effects: antioxidant support and metabolic regulation. Excess energy in the body creates free radicals, unstable molecules that damage cells and promote inflammation. Antioxidants like carotenoids help neutralize free radicals, reduce inflammation, and improve how genes related to fat storage and fat burning are expressed in the body. That translates into improved metabolism, better insulin sensitivity, and reduced signals to store fat around organs. Regular intake of carotenoid-rich foods is an excellent way to support your metabolic health from the inside out. So how do you get more carotenoids in your diet? It's simple. Increase your intake of colorful vegetables and fruits. Carrots, leafy greens like spinach and kale, bell peppers, squash, tomatoes, sweet potatoes, and other vibrant produce are all excellent sources. Try to fill at least half your plate with vegetables at most meals. The more colors you see, the more carotenoids you're likely getting. This isn't about a fad diet. It's about a long-term, sustainable food pattern that supports fat metabolism and overall health. After carotenoids, another group of plant compounds that show real promise are polyphenols, specifically the flavonoid antioxidants found in green tea known as catechins. Green tea has been studied extensively for its effects on weight and metabolic health. In a large double-blind randomized trial in humans, people who consumed green tea with about 583 milligrams of catechins daily for 12 weeks showed significantly greater reductions in visceral fat area than those who consumed a much lower catechin amount. They also saw improvements in body fat mass, waist circumference, and other markers of adiposity. The specific catechin most often linked to health benefits is epigallocatechin gallate, or EGCG, which works by enhancing fat oxidation and energy expenditure. EGCG has been shown to stimulate parts of the nervous system that increase metabolic rate and encourage the body to use stored fat as fuel. Green tea also contains caffeine, which synergizes with catechins to further boost fat burning. While green tea alone won't magically melt visceral fat, including 2 to 3 cups a day, especially minimally processed forms like sencha or matcha, can be an easy and effective add-on to a healthy diet. Green tea's benefits don't stop at fat reduction. Other research suggests it may improve insulin sensitivity and lower markers of cardiovascular risk. Dietitians sometimes recommend it as part of an overall strategy for managing metabolic syndrome, a cluster of conditions that often includes high visceral fat, high blood sugar, high blood pressure, and abnormal cholesterol levels. Another dietary pattern shown to assist with visceral fat reduction is a high-fiber, whole foods approach that includes legumes, whole grains, fruits, and vegetables. High-fiber intake improves satiety, stabilizes blood sugar, and supports a healthier gut microbiome, all factors that contribute to improved metabolic health and reduced visceral adiposity. In nutrition guidance developed by registered dietitians, consistent intake of high-fiber meals is linked to better reductions in visceral fat measurements over time compared with lower fiber diets. Beyond carotenoids, catechins and fiber, a broader plant-forward diet rich in polyphenols, such as a Mediterranean or green Mediterranean diet, has been shown to double the loss of visceral fat compared with standard healthy eating patterns in long-term intervention studies. In one trial, participants following a green Mediterranean diet for 18 months showed a roughly 14% reduction in visceral fat, which was about twice the amount of visceral fat loss seen in those following a typical Mediterranean diet. Food matters, but diet alone isn't enough if you want the fastest, most impactful visceral fat reduction. That's where exercise comes in. Not just to burn calories, but to directly influence the metabolic pathways that mobilize fat from deep within your body. A large body of research shows that exercise reduces visceral adipose tissue even when changes in total body weight are modest or absent. In a systematic review and meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials, adults who engaged in prolonged exercise saw a significant decrease in visceral fat area, about a 7% drop on average, compared to people who did not exercise. These improvements correlated with exercise intensity and frequency, suggesting that exercise stimulates visceral fat loss even when the scale barely changes. Another meta-analysis specifically looking at high-intensity interval training, HIIT, found that HIIT consistently reduces total body fat, abdominal fat, and visceral fat mass in adults. Across dozens of studies involving hundreds of participants, HIIT led to statistically significant fat reduction, and in many cases, running-based HIIT was slightly more effective than cycling-based HIIT. There's also evidence that combining HIIT with conventional training offers extra benefits. One 8-week controlled trial found that a mixed program significantly reduced visceral adiposity and improved fitness metrics more than conventional exercise alone. What these studies show together is that exercise intensity and consistency matter for visceral fat reduction. A systematic review that pooled data from over 80 randomized controlled trials concluded that vigorous aerobic exercise and HIIT tend to deliver stronger reductions in visceral fat compared with lower intensity approaches. But the difference between HIIT and moderate aerobic exercise is often small when you control for total energy expenditure and consistency, meaning the best plan is the one you can realistically do regularly. One particularly striking pattern from research is that changes in visceral fat often occur without major changes in body weight. In many exercise interventions, participants lost significant visceral adipose tissue and had improved insulin sensitivity even when their total body weight stayed about the same. This is a powerful reason to stop judging progress solely by the scale. Body composition changes can be much more meaningful than minor weight swings. You might wonder how intense your workouts need to be. Studies suggest that exercise that elevates your heart rate into a moderate to vigorous zone, roughly 70 to 80% of your maximum heart rate, for sustained periods 2 to 4 times per week, is effective for visceral fat loss. Even at this level, you can still talk in full sentences, though you may sound slightly out of breath. This is the kind of intensity where you are pushing your cardiovascular system enough to stimulate metabolic shifts and burn deep stored energy. I hope this gives you a clearer understanding of how visceral fat works and how to tackle it. Stay consistent, stay active, and take it one healthy choice at a time. Your internal health is worth it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.